3 ODST is an odd game, a big divergence from the usual sort of the Halo series. For one thing, it's a side story to Halo 2, not Halo 3. Halo 3 had just come out though, so I understand that they didn't want it to sound old. It tells a story about a group of orbital drop shock troopers, essentially paratroopers that come in from space, landing in New Mombasa after the chief leaves the city in Halo 2. To distinguish it from the main trilogy, ODST has a dark noir theme, with a mystery relating more to Oni than the Forerunner. Its main theme is a parallel with Dante's Inferno, where New Mombasa represents hell, and the protagonist is guided through this hell by an AI named Virgil. In addition to the main storyline, there's also an audio drama hidden in the terminals throughout the game. This audio drama is called Sadie's Story, and it was created by Fourth Wall Studios, which contains some of the people who made I Love Bees. And I love bees! The website Lesbian Gamers made an extremely negative feminist analysis of the game, characterizing it as almost completely anti-feminist. While I agree with some of the points about male prominence in the narrative, I think the author really misunderstood a lot about the game. As a result of the article, however, a lot of feminists consider Halo 3 ODST completely sexist, full stop, without even having played it. So I present this in-depth review to give a more even but still feminist perspective. I'll also have something to say about the extreme misogynistic and homophobic backlash against lesbian gamers from the Halo community for daring to say something was sexist. Sadie's story chronologically takes place before the events of the game, so I'll cover that first. Sadie Endesha is the daughter of a scientist working with Oni in New Mombasa. Her scientist father, referred to only as Dr. Endesha, developed Virgil, a subroutine of the superintendent, the dumb AI that runs the city. AIs like Cortana and Durga are smart AIs, self-aware, but Virgil is simply a nifty computer program on the level of a particularly intelligent pet. Dr. Endesha used Virgil as a babysitter to keep Sadie safe in his absence.
Your tax dollars at work.
But she interacts with Virgil more like it's a pet than an authority figure.
He's a city. A bad city.
Bad city. Bad city. This part represents the first circle of hell, Limbo, full of people who don't realize they're in hell.
Virgil, go to hell. Scratch that. Hell just came here.
When the Covenant invades, the UNSC orders an evacuation of the civilian population. Because her father is in Oni's underground facility, he can't evacuate with the others. So she decides to get him out herself. This means going against the flow of traffic into the occupied city. Imminent death does weird things to people, and she encounters people both good and bad adjusting to the breakdown of civilization. These experiences represent the lower 8 circles of hell: lust, gluttony, greed, anger, heresy, violence, fraud, and treachery. Representing the lust circle is corrupt police commissioner Kinsler, who picks her up and then attempts to rape her in the backseat of his car because he had some attraction to her mother, who was a criminal defense attorney murdered by her own client. He has a special car undetectable by Big Brother surveillance, so Virgil is unable to see inside. Kinsler's driver, Mike Branley, decides he's had enough of letting Kinsler get away with his various crimes. He stops the car and beats up Kinsler, allowing Sadie to get away. Sadie is a more realistic character than Jan James of I Love Bees, so I don't really mind that she doesn't get out herself. Not every girl can be a superhero, and I rather like the human limitations. Even Buffy needs Angel or Riley to save her sometimes, right? Mike is a really nice guy who seizes upon the opportunity offered by the end of the world to stand up for himself and others. He refuses to do anything other than drive out of the city, so Sadie has him drop her off. She's angry that he wants to make decisions for her and insisting she escape, and they have a little fight. As he drives off, she kind of acknowledges that it was bad to have the fight, so I think it just comes from the extreme stress and isn't supposed to be a serious point that he overstepped his bounds in trying to get her to escape. She also alludes to feeling some attraction for him by comparing the situation to a bad date.
And this is why you always bring cab fare on a first date.
Now in the gluttony circle, she runs into Jonas, an obese butcher giving away free food to refugees.
Biggest man I've ever seen.
Though Jonas seems like a nice, altruistic guy, he also displays extreme aggression towards those who try to stop his charity mission. even though it seems to be hindering the flow of traffic out of the city. After meeting a man who's evil and a man who's good, Jonas seems to be a man of chaotic neutral alignment, showing that the portrayal of men is quite balanced. Sadie tries to get Jonas to run away, but he points out that she doesn't want to get rescued, and he says that he'll only leave if she leaves with him. She promises to go back for him, but she continues onward into the greed circle. She ducks into a casino where a bunch of looters are breaking into slot machines. Most of the looters are a generic crowd of men, but one is a crazy old woman, referred to by the captions as the crone. The crone is bizarrely aggressive and threatens everyone with a shotgun. She fires several shots at the ATM to finally get her jackpot.
You hear me, you damn machine? I want my money!
But the shots attract the Covenant, and she ends up killed by brutes. Yeah, the crone is a big stereotype, and the word crone itself is offensive. Arguably, this kind of prejudice is the same shallow thinking as is demonstrated with Jonas. You know, he represents gluttony, so of course he's really fat. She can also be considered the feminine parallel of Jonas as chaotic neutral, though far more aggressive to contrast with Sadie. She threatens Sadie, calls her a slut, and is punished by the narrative via brutes. Sadie hides behind a dumpster and the brutes are about to pass on by when she gets a call from her father, and his voice attracts the brutes. Fortunately, Virgil summons Mike, who gets a splatter medal by making roadkill of the brutes. So, again, she got rescued by a man, but in this case she was also put in trouble by one. So, yeah. As for Mike, he's hardly the macho, swaggering hero, just a guy trying to do what's right. And he shows vulnerability as Sadie helps him out of the car. Mike mumbles to himself that he's attracted to her.
Jeez, Mike. The things you do for a kiss.
And given that we know she's attracted to him, it seems to me like the unproblematic makings of a love story. The car was damaged in the crash, so they try to cross a bridge on foot, now in the anger circle. Kinsler shows up in a pelican and tries to abduct Sadie at gunpoint, but Virgil remotely controls a garbage truck and buries him under a load of garbage. Sadie and Mike then use the truck as an armored personnel carrier. Now in the heresy circle, a guy named Tom has the same idea and joins them. Tom seems nice enough, but the disaster has made him stupid. Dr. Endesha calls and tells them about how he's seen engineers, aliens of the Covenant, fixing the superintendent. And Tom gets it into his head that the Covenant are the good guys. It was previously shown in the Halo graphic novel that Oni propaganda conceals the magnitude of the UNSC defeat, and as a result it's apparently a popular theory that the war is a result of UEG colonialism, and Tom is not playing with a full deck. He screams to the Covenant that he wants to surrender, and Sadie and Mike are forced to abandon the truck as it's attacked by the Covenant. They use Virgil to contact Dr. Endesha, who tells them about a particular engineer interfacing with the superintendent. In Halo 3 ODST, engineers are bonded to explosives, so they can function as suicide bombers. But 6 engineers blew themselves up in such a way as to free the 7th. Dr. Endesha believes the engineers to be potential allies, so he is programming Virgil to act as an interpreter. They're cut off as Kinsler shuts down the superintendent network, supposedly to keep the Covenant from accessing intelligence, but really to disable Sadie. Sadie and Mike go to the police HQ to try to turn Virgil back on, and they enter the violent circle. They run into a psychopathic ex-cop who took advantage of the fall of civilization to kill his ex-co-workers, for revenge for petty things like drinking his milk. A SWAT team eventually takes him out, but at cost to some of their members. Sadie manages to reach the officer in charge of the superintendent, and it's the only other female character in the audio drama who's not called a crone. She's already speaking on the radio with Captain Veronica Dare, who's trying to get her to turn on the superintendent, and she wants to, but is under orders from Kinsler not to. Sadie pretends she has a gun in a really fake way, and persuades her to pretend to turn on the superintendent out of fear for her life. This exchange could allow Halo 3 ODST to pass the Bechdel test, only if you're not picky about names. When Virgil comes back online, it seems to have merged with the engineer to create a new being. This new being is also rather confusingly referred to as Virgil. Now having entered the fraud circle, Mike angrily confronts Steven, the propaganda officer, who lies about the massacre downstairs, casting the deaths as part of some noble victory against the Covenant. Steven explains that he comforts the dying individuals too weak to leave the city, giving them some hope in their last hours instead of tormenting them with the truth.
Some days, truth isn't really a luxury we can afford.
He offers Mike a chance to speak, and Mike can't bear to tell the truth either. Unfortunately, his radio appearance attracts Kinsler's attention. Kinsler phones in and threatens Sadie's father, If Sadie doesn't surrender and leave with him on a train for Nairobi, he'll flood Dr. Endesha's lab with deadly argon. Sadie agrees, but plays it intelligently as they enter the treachery circle. While she enters the train with Kinsler, Mike riles up the crowd of panicked refugees, getting them angry at Kinsler. Kinsler sadistically torments Sadie by informing her that he already killed her father. Sadie then has Virgil open the doors, exposing Kinsler to the wrath of his own people, and they literally tear him apart. Sadie wants to go to rescue Virgil, the last remnant of her father, but Virgil tells her to go with Mike and start a new life. The Covenant show up and Sadie first wants to die in an effort to save Virgil, but she eventually comes around to leaving with Mike. She's finally able to let go of her father, who was a dead man from the moment the Covenant arrived. I think it's interesting how Mike represents domestic life. Sadie's story is a nice little story about a strong young woman in a world going to hell. Kinsler makes for a good devil for a young woman to face. He is terrifying as a raping police chief who will use all his resources to hunt her down, and she manages to overcome him with her wits and the help of her friends. I just wish it had more female prominence. We see a wide spectrum of male characters, but only a few women. Sadie's mother is indicated to have been a strong person, but we never actually see her, making her the Sadie story equivalent of Weapons Master Sanjik, a female elite of Halo Wars no one has ever heard of. On top of that, Sadie's story is relatively obscure, hidden in the terminals. It is entirely possible to beat the game several times without ever becoming aware of it. It's comparable to the Halo 4 characters the Didact and the Librarian, who were both introduced in the terminals of Halo 3, but only extreme Halo nerds like me actually knew that. Very few gamers have heard of Sadie Endesha.